Final Fantasy VII. This is debatably the greatest game of all time. It's personally my favorite game ever. I've finished it like a billion freaking times. Beating the bosses, training chocobos, finishing off all the weapon side content. I mean, it is a game that, in my opinion, is truly as close to perfect as you can get. You can see I even have things like the special limited edition Final Fantasy VII shirt. But I'm actually incredibly curious about the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy because they do seem different. They seem like a radical departure of the classic lore that a lot of us have enjoyed. And more than that, they have been teasing some very peculiar stuff. Yesterday, at the Summer Game Fest, we got this 3-minute trailer that showed off a bunch of, obviously, cool characters we love, like Elena. We saw a lot of new combat. We saw a lot of, team combo takedowns and stuff. But we also got a chance to witness what seems to be confirmation of some controversial fan theories. Perhaps multiple timelines, multiple Sephiroths, multiple things that are going to be radically different from the original. And I want to talk about that. What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here. Hi, hope you're having a great day. If you could like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Now, this is not just me talking completely out of my butt. I've already put about 150 hours into the Final Fantasy VII Remake. I've put about 1,000 hours into the original Final Fantasy VII. I've also read all the Final Fantasy VII books, including On the Way to a Smile and The Kids Are All Right, including the newly released book. This actually just came out a couple weeks ago. It is called Traces of Two Pasts. It is a Final Fantasy VII novel, which is 100% canon. This is released by Square Enix, and it's essentially taking place between the events of Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1 and Part 2. It's got Tifa and Aerith as they're walking to Calm, sort of discussing their individual pasts, their previous hijinks and stuff like that, their adventures before this adventure. But there is some stuff in this trailer that I feel like is already connecting to the books, and it's drawing a lot of attention. Now, the biggest thing definitely being the fact that this game does seem like it's going to be utterly massive. The fact that they are very much advertising the fact that this is going to be 2 discs. PlayStation 5 discs can hold 100 gigs. So this game possibly being 150, 180, or even a straight up 200 gig game, it's probably going to be enormous and probably very long. Now, they have definitely confirmed that the Final Fantasy VII Remake games are just going to be a trilogy. A, B, and C. First game called Remake, second game called Rebirth, and theoretically the third game is probably going to be called Return or Revenge, because we already got Crisis Core Reunion, so I assume they're not going to be using the R of that twice. But here is the line in the trailer that everybody is debating the most. I think actually everything hinges on this. Sephiroth is talking. We see, this is obviously young Tifa here, and she gets the chop. Bam, slice. And this is when Sephiroth says, "You know I killed her, so who is she?" It seems like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth Sephiroth is trying to convince Cloud that Tifa is an imposter since Cloud saw her die. This is genius. Tifa will question Cloud on Nibelheim, and he'll be manipulated by Sephiroth thinking that she's fake. Now, obviously, there is a very long timeline to Final Fantasy VII. It's so long, in fact, that there's books published actually outlining the exact specific events, when they happen, how they happen, and sort of detailing when stuff took place. Things like the Wutai War, the founding of Midgar, the rising of Avalanche. There's been a lot of individual, very important chess pieces on the board that create the storyline's beginnings that start in Final Fantasy VII itself. So, honestly, one of the biggest parts, though, is the fact that Cloud is confused. Cloud is not Cloud. Cloud has been brainwashed. Cloud has been experimented on. Now, a lot of people are already pitching the idea that this line is a total fake out, that this is actually either A, deceptive editing by the team to not spoil their own game, which makes sense. It's obviously to try and entice us, which I guess worked because here I am making a video about it. But people are also saying, I think Sephiroth is using Cloud's hazy memory to trick him into not trusting Tifa. Cloud likely doesn't know that her training master nursed her back to health, so from his perspective, the last time he saw her 5 years ago was when she was actually critically injured. Convincing Cloud that the real Tifa died during the incident will reinforce the conviction that his memory of Nibelheim and the incident there is the correct one, and that pursuing Sephiroth is the right thing to do, although in reality, he is being summoned there for the reunion in Northern Crater. My theory is the developers want Tifa to speak up more about Cloud's Nibelheim story early on rather than remaining silent, and will have Sephiroth manipulate Cloud's psyche. This is so interesting. A lot of these people are also talking about the fact that the translation is different. Now, if you played Final Fantasy VII Remake in English, like I did, it seems like there's just one Sephiroth. It seems like there's just this one Sephiroth who's talking trash, who's showing up, when technically, according to the developers themselves, there's actually 4 separate Sephiroths, in a matter of speaking. Now, the way they break this down is that when you actually read the original Japanese subtitles, these beings refer to themselves in different tenses, different pronouns, different styles of speech to connotate the fact that this is not just one guy walking around. This is more of a deity. This is something that sort of has ascended the timeline. Now, here's what they are. The 4 Sephiroths are basically the illusion Sephiroth that only Cloud can see, that shows up like when there's a burning building and stuff like that. That's when he's actually hallucinating a Sephiroth. There's the hooded black man Sephiroth, which is sort of like when Sephiroth projects himself through a Sephiroth clone. The flashback version of Sephiroth, so whenever we actually see him represented in some sort of story being told that seems more realistic than it is. And finally, the unknown Sephiroth. Now, everybody knows that at the very, very end of the game, we start to see this weird, like, ascended version of Sephiroth. You know, when we're out here in the middle of space, people call it the end of time Sephiroth. That seems like the real, actual, final conclusion Sephiroth. But here's the weird part of this. This is the current primary theory that a lot of people have. So here is the original Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. Then we have the original Final Fantasy VII, then the books that I mentioned earlier, then of course the movie, Advent Children, and then finally Dirge Cerberus, and then the ending cutscene of the original Final Fantasy. Okay, this is the original timeline, right? This is what everybody knows, and it ends with the same exact Sephiroth outside of time. But here's the thing. Basically what's happening is people theorize that somehow Aerith, the way she was able to help people, the way that Aerith was having visions and stuff, even in the original Final Fantasy VII, is because she is using the live stream to pretty much email herself prophecies, sends memories to her past self to help combat Sephiroth's plan. Okay, that's pretty good, but here's the thing. All along, Sephiroth is also in the live stream. Here's where Sephiroth died. Remember, Sephiroth died way before the events of Final Fantasy VII actually began. He gets killed when they're first confronting him in the reactor in Nibelheim. So this is when Sephiroth enters the live stream. So as she is sending messages back to herself, he also manages to pick that up. This is actually sort of time travel Sephiroth. So he sends his consciousness back in time through the live stream to try and change history by subsuming his past self's mind. Basically, this new main Sephiroth goes back, and now he's trying to come here. Now we have the Final Fantasy VII Remake timeline. This is much more convoluted. Essentially down here is like the black goop. It is the singularity that encompasses all time in the planet. Think of this as like fourth dimensional concepts. If you've ever read anything like Brian Greene's The Elegant Universe, I don't know why I'm actually referencing quantum mechanic books I've read, but essentially outside of time, things are happening concurrently. Everything is happening at once. They also sort of reference this in the book Slaughterhouse-5 by Kurt Vonnegut, which is my big chest tattoo, so it goes. In that book, everybody is happening, everything, everywhere at once. You're currently young, you're currently old, you're currently dead, you're currently alive, you're currently having your parents meet so they can nut in each other. That's kind of what this miasma is. This is all of life's existence, which is all of time and its encompassment. So essentially, everybody here is trying to battle against the whispers, which are sort of this time-encompassing element. So here, Sephiroth goads the party into confronting the whispers inside the singularity. That was the end of the original game, where they go into the weird goop etherness and battle the whisper god thing, right? Okay. Now, the party is spared the effects of the altered past due to their presence in the singularity, but the world they return to is different from the one they came from. The past has changed and the future is no longer certain. Essentially, what this means in the most psychopathic description possible is that there is one timeline. It seems like there's two timelines, but in the process of this happening, we've already had the entire events of the original game, and then he sends himself back. Now we had the events of this game, which were partially interrupted by the singularity, but are now back on track because of the boss fight of the first game. In Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, we are now in a separate but singular timeline. This is the one thing that can possibly happen. This is the one timeline, it seems like, but now things are just messed up. Things are a little bit astray. So our characters have memories of events that just didn't happen in this timeline. Now, this is actually a tweet. The guy who made this original chart here, which a lot of fans have discussed, obviously he posted this in November, so it's a little bit out of date of this new trailer, but it explains how we have these events that show from the newest trailer, like Zack trying to help with evacuations. We have this huge destruction of what looks like, they're referring to it as like a tornado and destroying huge chunks. This seems like what we're getting, especially at the very beginning of this trailer. We're getting visions of the timeline that we have now erased. So this is showing us that in the other timeline that was going to happen, Tifa is dead, probably. Cloud is freaking just not even here. This, to me, shows the fact that while there is these separate timelines, they have a lot of freedom to take stuff where they want, but I think the major events are still going to happen. I think Aerith is still going to die. I think Sephiroth is still going to show up and talk his trash, but I think, to me, what I'm currently hoping is that in a way, I am kind of praying that we get a little bit less of the Sephiroth time travel gobbledygook. Not because I think that's bad storytelling, but I think part of the effectiveness of Sephiroth as a villain in the original game was that he wasn't constantly getting shoved down your throat. I mean, as much as I want Sephiroth to get shoved down my throat, I think having us fight Genova, having us go against other random people, going against Hojo, worrying about other experiments, it makes it so that when you finally fought Sephiroth, the one time at the end of the original game, it was very thematically impressive. It really kind of set that stage of like, holy heck, this is the end of the story itself. Now, with this current version, I really hope that we don't fight against Sephiroth as the last boss of all three games. That's my biggest hope. I'm pretty confident that this game is going to be great. It's definitely going to be huge, but I don't know. This is just a theory. I think there is one very goopy timeline, and I'm curious to see how it plays out. But what do you guys think? Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a big old thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. And please keep dreaming. Oh man, I love Final Fantasy so damn much. I love Final Fantasy VII. I love Final Fantasy Theory. Let me know if you guys enjoyed this video. Give it a like. If this gets a couple thousand likes, maybe I'll do another theory video at some point. But just about Resident Evil and Final Fantasy, because I don't know anything else. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.